Spinning my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the foe in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
And we are back. This is another episode of HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. We're a little bit late. I apologize for that. But we are here. This is the show that values time and puts God first. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's get started. So sometimes you say things and they become the standard or normal to the point of you're not supposed to ever question them. But I wouldn't be me if I didn't question things that I think are valid. So one of my crazier opinions I had earlier in life and very early on in this, even before I got into the microphone, was that in the middle of the Patriots dynasty, so let's use the Randy Moss years through the 2 tight end years. They didn't win any Super Bowls. They went to 2, obviously. These are very famously the Giant Super Bowls. And at a point, I was wondering, why are we still giving Belichick all of this credit? Now, this isn't even with we started to tear up Belichick's legacy once him and Brady split up. I was starting to question Belichick during the actual run. And that's because something just didn't make sense to me. Why are we giving Belichick all this love when the Patriots' offense was still great? Moss, Welker, the 2 tight ends. But their defense was getting worse. And in my head, I was like, well, isn't Belichick a defensive coach? So wouldn't his contribution to the team and what makes him great and what shows he's one of the best head coaches of all time and was on his way to being the best head coach of all time, that the defense is amazing? We give him extra credit for the Super Bowl against the Rams, both of them. The one where the Jared Goff, Sean McVay Rams were held to 3 points, and the greatest show on turf Rams. I was like, isn't this just a Tom Brady thing then? If their offense is still great and they're still winning games, they're still going to the playoffs, but the defense isn't performing, isn't that on Belichick? And I was always told, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about. That's Bill Belichick. How can you question it? Are we getting to that point with Andy Reid? Look, I did my coach's ranking before the season started, and Andy Reid was number 1. I'm not taking that away from Andy. He's the best head coach in football because his resume says that, and he deserves that, is what it is. But the last couple of years, we've kept asking, what's wrong with Mahomes? What's wrong with Mahomes? What's wrong with the Chiefs offense? Why are they no longer explosive? Oh, well, it's because Tyreek Hill's not there. It's because, Travis Kelce's not in his prime. When do we get to ask the question, has Andy Reid just lost his fastball? Is Andy Reid no longer the so far ahead of the league offensive genius that he was when we first saw this dynasty start to take place? And no one's saying he's a bad coach. No one's saying he's not a great coach. I'm just simply asking, when are we allowed to ask that question? When are we allowed to question Andy Reid? Because here's the thing. You know who's actually been the best coach on the Chiefs staff the last couple of years? It's been the defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo, who people just refuse to hire as a head coach. And that's, again, part of this reason why this dynasty has lasted so long, is that they've been allowed to keep their DC because, again, teams just don't want to hire him as a head coach. But the Chiefs' defense has been the best part of this team. So then wouldn't that make Steve Spagnuolo the best part and the best coach on this roster? Remember when Eric Bieniemy, and I stood up for Eric Bieniemy a lot more than I feel like a lot of other people did. A lot of everybody else, when it came to Eric Bieniemy leaving the Kansas City Chiefs, there was a lot of, it doesn't matter, Andy Reid is the play caller anyway. We're now 2+ years into subpar offenses. Did Eric Bieniemy really have as little an impact as you guys all tried to tell me? Again, Andy Reid's a great coach. We know that. But if you're not, you're obviously still have team success. But if your thing, which you're responsible for, which you're in charge of, is the offense, and people have questioned Mahomes. People have said Mahomes is no longer quite the guy. He's not throwing the deep ball. He's not creating the light show the way he used to. So we're allowed to question the quarterback, who's one of the most talented quarterbacks you've ever seen. A lot of people already have in their top 2 or 3. Am I allowed to question the head coach who's in charge of the offense? If every other team, when the Bills lose in the playoffs, what do we do with Sean McDermott? Well, your defense got lit up and you're a defensive head coach. That's on you, because we all have this belief and knowledge and understanding that Josh Allen is so great. Why is your defense getting torched in the playoffs? If the Ravens were to lose, you know what the Ravens almost never lose on? Special teams. If they were, I guarantee we'd go after Harbaugh, because what's Harbaugh's background? It's special teams. We do this with every other coach throughout the history of the NFL. And like I said, I did it with Bill Belichick. When the Patriots had a great offense and Brady was out there throwing it for 4,500, 5,000 yards, Welker, the two tight ends, the offense was amazing. Defense started to take a step back. It was no longer this dominant defense that we had known and become accustomed to seeing under Bill Belichick. So when do we get to start questioning Andy Reid? And I'm obviously not saying the Chiefs should get rid of Andy Reid. I'm not saying the Chiefs should look to move on from Andy Reid. You should let Andy Reid be there pretty much as long as Mahomes is there and as long as he wants to coach. I get that. He is in a unmovable position. But just because you don't move on, is it not fair to just question a little bit? Is it not fair to ask, shouldn't your offense, the offensive genius, the guy that we designate, a lot of people have designated the greatest offensive play caller in the history of the sport? And isn't it interesting? We're not seeing these. The Chiefs got very famous there for a couple of years of these fancy plays. The ringer on the rosy against the Raiders, the trick plays on offense, the shovel passes on the goal line. It's all this little cute stuff. And then suddenly, as their offense has gotten worse, we're seeing less and less of those play calls. Again, that's an Andy Reid thing. So again, I'm just here to put the question out there. And again, I'm not going to do, I said this yesterday and I mean it. I'm not going to kill the Chiefs or say the Chiefs are finished at 0-2. I just don't believe that. I might have a hate train for the Chiefs, but I can be fair sometimes. 0-2 is not a death sentence for that team. Now, I said, if they make it to 0-3 or 1-3, either after the Giants game and the Ravens game, then we can start having a conversation. I think 1-3, 2-4 is absolutely on the board. And then we can start discussing the quote-unquote total downfall of the Chiefs. But before we get there, let's look around. Let's use our eyes. Let's think about it. Andy Reid doesn't seem to be quite the genius that he was a few years ago. Just asking the question, man. Moving on to another coach. Did you know North Carolina's 2-1? North Carolina football. So, North Carolina football, obviously, we know the story. They hired Bill Belichick. There's all the stuff that happened during the offseason. And I said it's justifiable because, Bill, you're going to get one of two things. And they've already gotten one. You're going to get... Now, I don't know if North Carolina as a football program is going to be able to recruit enough talent because of Bill's not Deion. Bill's not a Nick Saban as far as old school recruiting. And so were they going to have enough talent to win at a super high level? I didn't quite think that was possible. So then the next thing is you're going to be talked about and you're going to sell out tickets. Now, the selling out tickets has happened. North Carolina sold out a bunch of tickets. I think they sold out their season tickets before we even got to game one against TCU. When they got blasted by TCU, and everybody was talking about Bill heading up into that game. Everybody was talking about Bill. They get blasted by TCU. I haven't heard a word from mainstream sports media since then. Bill does not have the kind of juice. Bill isn't. Two things can be true. Same thing just about Andy Reid. Bill is an obvious all-time legend, the greatest coach in NFL history. You could run down his resume, his superlatives. They're all going to be the best, the greatest ever. All that is absolutely valid. But there's no juice left with Bill. When Deion was at Colorado, and yes, they beat TCU game one. Even when Colorado's first season went bad, they were talking about Deion in Colorado every single week. They were in the news. They were in the mainstream sports media. And so when it came time for recruiting at a future date, you know there was always going to be eyes on you because Deion had an under 500 Colorado team. People were talking about it. People were viewing the games. People wanted to see him. Celebrities are coming to the games. I haven't heard a word out of North Carolina, with the one exception being He's not allowing Patriots personnel to go scout. That's it. All this stuff during the offseason, all that stuff leading into week one, and we got one story that they tried to put under the rock post week one, that week one game against TCU. Where's the juice? Where is the excitement for North Carolina? If you are a prospect, because Bill's not running a fun program by any means. Nobody believes that. Nobody believes Bill Belichick is running a fun program in North Carolina. We're going to go there, have a great time. You might learn stuff because he is, again, he's the greatest defensive mind in the history of football. But these are still 18 to 22-year-old kids. They either want the exposure or you either need the incredible chance to win, which I don't think they're going to have because they're not going to be able to recruit like the other big-time programs, or you need the exposure that you're going to get from being there, or the weird, and this only happens with a handful of coaches, the almost guarantee that this school will get me to the next level. This was Nick Saban's thing at Alabama forever. Nick was never running a quote-unquote fun program. Nick was never the super media or super exposure guy, but you knew if you went to Alabama, the chances you were going to go to the NFL were much greater than almost any other school in the country. And again, they're 2-1. And I haven't heard a word since week one. Something to keep your eyes on. I mean, if you want to be a part of one of the coolest, most unique communities, don't forget to like and subscribe.